spring. So, what's your favorite memory, or what do you normally like to do? Good afternoon, Miss Beverly. So sorry to cut you off.
That's okay.
Good afternoon. Just getting busy. How's everyone doing?
Wonderful,
Fine.
wonderful. Thank you.
Great, great, great. I sent you over a presentation. I don't know if you're able to see it, but let me know.
I did not. I will check. But to start, we are just sharing pre-COVID, since it's the first day of spring. What did you love to do in the beginning of spring?
Okay. Eyes here. I'm gonna put on. So basically, let me first get me in. So basically, what I'm looking for is for me to see my video, put my video on. But ladies, I've been blessed. I'm a city worker of 36 years and been blessed year and just about a year that I've been at home. So basically, I says going out party because I've gone in regards to maybe a pop-up, around people. And this morning I went to Prospect Park to really get connected with nature, so we walked around the skating ring and had some good memories because I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, and took pictures and was near the waterfalls. So that is the beginning, which is today, the connection back to nature, getting into myself. Thank you.
Awesome. Miss Brown, sorry I kind of cut you off there. Miss Brown?
I was muted, forgive me. I just have the fondest memories of childhood. Actually, in the springtime, I attended a church as a child, and we had to remember Easter speeches. So that was like how I knew spring had sprung, because all of us in the neighborhood would get Easter speeches, and because I was a good reader at an early age, I would always get the really long ones to memorize. So I would spend the first few days of spring memorizing Easter speeches, like saying them in the mirror and walking through the yard and saying them over and over again so I wouldn't get embarrassed when I got to church. But that is like pre-COVID, but early childhood memories of what spring was, remembering Easter speeches.
As an adult, for me, it's been all about enjoying the outdoors, taking lots and lots of pictures, and just enjoying nature. Because everything is newly in bloom, so it's just so beautiful. So many colors, away from all the drab winter, it's bright and sunny. Miss Sapphire, I cannot find your presentation. I'm checking my other email. Give me one moment.
Yes, I think it should be
it's
under
the other email.
one.
Gotcha.
Okay, because hopefully it just take its course and open up for you with no problem.
Yes, it has.
But
okay.
Yes,
wonderful,
good,
wonderful.
Very good.
So I will share that after our reads today. So for our first book, we're going to have Are You My Mother by P.D. Eastman, followed by Damion's Dillema from Damsels in Defense. And the wonderful Miss Sapphire is going to also present the Parents Guide from Damsels in Defense. I'm looking forward to that presentation. So just if you want to give any feedback on that first book, go on ahead before I go into the questions.
I just wanted to say it's a classic. I have 3 children and I read that book It used to be on my little kids bookshelf. I had a bookshelf full of children's books, and it is definitely a classic. And all three of my children are very familiar. And I also read it in my classrooms when I taught even fourth grade.
Okay.
Well, I like to share.
Sure.
Miss Bev. Well, I remember green eggs and ham. So I guess everybody did at one point. But yes, that is a classic, what you pointed out. And but again, it was, to me, it was something you could relate to. That's one thing I loved about Dr. Seuss's books. You had different colors. They wasn't just white, black. They had green, yellow. So I like that about the author himself. So that's what I like to add on.
But one thing in me choosing this book was it was interesting, the feedback from children, and not just my own, others I've seen in other little group read alouds, like at libraries, and then just like online forums, just the things the kids specifically pulled out about it. I mean, aside from it being long, of all the other classic books, they were kind of like, they were short. I wouldn't say all the Dr. Seuss books were short. I guess, you know, it's kids, so they got to sit around for a long period of time. Um, they just, I guess, felt it dragged on with going to each animal or thing for the mother. But it was something a lot of kids said that they didn't like about it was that the mother bird left the baby bird or the egg all alone. And this made me think, just in terms of the mother bird, how serious we take the reinforcement of gender roles in our children's books. So that is the first question. Because sometimes things are just so subtle, especially this day and age where we have all these different movements around changing the stereotypes.
I wanted to make sure I shared the air before I jump in because I could talk. But the fact that you brought out that subtlety about gender roles, whoa, I was thinking on a whole nother avenue. But yeah, it is automatically assumed female responsibility for children and offspring. It is automatically assumed that your mama let you go out the house like that, or where your mama at? Your mama didn't teach you any better. And those are the things, and it's like this baby bird is going around, where is my mother? Never once. And I know that the animal kingdom operates a little bit differently from the bird kingdom acts a little bit differently than the mammal kingdom. So I do understand the animal aspect of that, how the animals act and behave differently. However, we don't ever hear nothing about the daddy. Where your daddy at? Why your daddy leave you in the nest by yourself? And when we're in just relating that back to that subtlety of the female responsibility in our society, when we think about it, the first thing we ask children is, your mama didn't teach you any better, but we very rarely hear anything when it comes to raising children or caring for children. We very rarely hear anybody ask, where your daddy at? Did your dad let you go out the house like that? Didn't your daddy raise you any better? You very rarely hear those things. So the fact that you were able to bring out a gender role in this book, that is amazing. I didn't even look at it like that. Didn't even look at it like that.
I mean, when we talk about how things are and we kind of trace back to where it comes from, sometimes it's these little things that we don't even think about. That it's constant in most children's books. It's a constant.
Well, I would definitely agree on that. I was also going to talk about how society changes. So therefore, the books needs to change. The books, to me, needs to either be, inclusive. They could have added, like you said, on this one, let me get a new revision of the daddy bird hanging out. But again, this is a good, well conversation, because back then when they developed it, the woman was at home and the woman took full responsibility. And so even though the father's doing his thing, probably working and all the rest of the stuff, that definitely is a good idea in regards to gender. Also, again, like I mentioned, it's about us rethinking on the books that we grew up, and how would it apply as we move forward with our teachings of our children, not because it gave us joy, but what are they getting back? So you're absolutely right. We do need to hear what children think about the books that we may have grew up on. Thank you.
Yes, yes. So the second question is, when it came to the different characters in the book that the bird was approaching with the question, are you my mother? In a human, society, how do we handle someone's lost child? Because when I grew up, it was more of a community. Nowadays, not so much. It's very few people that I've seen personally who will take ownership of someone else's child, as opposed to, you better go find your mother or your father. So does anyone else share that sentiment?
Okay, well, I'll give you an experience that I had going to Prospect Park today. And my friend was telling me, Beverly, they ain't not paying you no mind. We was near the rocks. And, sometimes you have this, slime on the rocks. So the young little girls look like about maybe 10, 9, going in there. And I was sharing, funny, to one of the oldest ones. I don't know how to swim, so you better watch them. And my girlfriend said, they ain't paying you no mind. And I said, you know what? She may not be paying me no mind, but you have to get people aware of certain circumstances. You can't leave it that they know better. Again, I do believe, even the adults need to sometime to be redirected if they're willing to listen, because the
Yes.
experiences are different. So yes, what you were saying, I do believe that, because we are living in a society, again, it doesn't even matter if it's in New York. I'm sorry. I have people, North Carolina, different parts of the state. It is what it is. People will do things that are not trusting. If you start looking at statistics too, we have to, again, that's why I love, the safe hearts and everything, because we have to just rethink. That's what I believe in.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just leave it to that other person, even though if we're godly, thank Lord that they would bring us to them or bring them to the security guard. But you're absolutely right. It's a different ball game now. When it comes down to our little ones growing in the environment where people are not very kind, and they would just snatch up your child and
Yes.
here you go.
I've seen it for myself in a clothing store where this mother going about her business in the store and the child is running all over the place. And I watch 2 other people just stand watching the child, not with them at all, just saying, she's not even paying attention. Now, they didn't themselves then go and get the child or approach the parent. They just stood there and watched the child from a distance. Now, I mean, that, of course, I would think they would be the first to react if something did happen, to alert, the parent at that point or security. But it's, the state that we're in today, it's just sad. But then you have others who will say, I don't want no problems with somebody else and their child. So they won't intervene for that reason also.
I was just gonna say that, but I was, just holding back to share the air in the discussion. That's a big problem. because we're living in an age and a generation where people don't want you to tell them what to do. That's my child. Who are you? Who are you? And most, I hope that, I pray for the good of humanity. I pray. But we all know that there's some ghosts and goblins out there in human form, that they are doing evil things out here. But I live in the South, and back in the day, it was like it took a village to raise a child. Everybody watched everybody's children. Everybody looked out for everybody's children. And if you saw that something was out of place, a child was someplace that they shouldn't be, or a parent wasn't paying attention, without hesitation, you would address it. Without hesitation, you'd be like, if you don't get home, without hesitation. But that was a different generation and a different time. Back then, what I'm going to say is that a lot of times, and it was rare, I believe it was rare then, that people did take advantage of children. People did do bad things to children back then when the village seemed to be more invested. And because over time, people found out that there were some nasty people in the villages, people doing things to their children. Now here we are, fast forward 2020, 2021, people are like, don't talk to my child. Don't you correct my child, because things did get exposed earlier, and it wasn't everybody that was evil, but those one or two messed up the culture for now everybody is suspicious of everybody. Don't talk to my child. I got this. And it really, you have to be careful. But like Miss Beverly was saying, I do believe that we cannot automatically assume that people know and that they are aware. So we have to, with discernment, with a lot of I can't find the right word right now, but respect and manners, address people's children. I think for the good of us who are still out here, who care about the world and humanity, we should say something, but we have to be very careful about how we say it.
You're on mute.
Thank you, Ms. Sapphire. Thank you, Ms. Brown. The last question on this book was regarding the mother as well. And anyone could speak to it if they, have a personal attachment to this. But as a single mother or a single parent, do you get, I guess, a feeling of guilt from having to neglect your child? Or that's kind of how they would categorize it in a situation like this. Of course, you're a single parent, you have to go take care of your child, get food, you have to leave them alone. But as a single parent, what does that do to you as far as feeling guilty about having to do that?
Well, I'll speak up, Miss Bev. Now, my daughter is 39, so I got to backtrack a lot. But she do have 3 children. One is 20, turned 23. One is 8, and now my little baby girl, she just turned a year. So what's interesting about this, I was definitely on one-to-one with my daughter with her first child. She lived with me, going to school, taking care of what she had to take care. I have her back. And a lot of the that, my daughter said, "Mom, you're so paranoid. What's going on? This. I was just one that, first of all, I'm 6 feet tall, and I call them little people because we forget that they looking at kneecaps and little feet. And I always had them close to, like I said, close to my hip. But, back to what you were saying, my daughter still remember when she was a latch kid. And back then there was trust. Again, there was the neighborhood where, even though I was 3, if anyone's familiar with Brooklyn, I was like 3 blocks away from Albany Projects. But the neighborhood I was living into, brownstones. And what she had to do was just be right around the corner from her school, because as a parent, everything had to fit in accordance to me going to work and making sure that my baby girl is safe at home. It wasn't like I worked around the corner. I was working in Manhattan. So you're absolutely right. I mean, nothing with me until you locked in. I was fearful. I mean, it's just that, because I grew up with siblings. She's my only one. And now that she has her children, she's a lot more, I guess, what do you call it, get loose with them. But I told her with my baby girl, I says, you can't see your baby girl like you said, see your sons. So you're right, because when something happens to her, she's be the first one, oh my, the ear infection, and I try to just give a little information, but Lord knows, don't tell her what to do, it'd be a cat fight. But, I mean, that's respective of a mother and now a grandmother. So that's what I want to share.
Thank you, Miss Sapphire.
Being a single mother for a majority of my boys' lives, and I have 3 sons, they're all pretty much adults now. I have a 17-year-old lingering, waiting till graduation. They're pretty much adults. That guilt was so real. That guilt was so real. I remember a few instances in their childhood where, and they're back to back, boom, boom, boom. They're very close in age. So it wasn't like I had an older one that could watch the younger ones sufficiently. But I remember like laying in bed some nights and like, I'm really sick. I probably need to go see a doctor. I probably need to take myself to the ER. But if I go to the ER, I don't want to drag 3 kids with me. And I can't leave them here by themselves. So there were many nights where I would like feel sick, like, oh my God, I'm about to die. And I would not leave my home because I'm like, what would happen to my children if I go to that ER and I'm there 4 or 5 hours? We know how ER emergency rooms work. And something happens to my kids while I'm gone. I had to hold off on dating when they were smaller because I'm like, don't want to be bringing them around different men, but then I want to have a life of my own, but I can't leave my kids by themselves, things like that. So that guilt of, having to do what you have to do and then also enjoying smaller aspects of your life is very difficult from a single parent standpoint. And that book really does, and you don't look at a children's book that deeply. You know what I'm saying? You really don't look at it. You're just like, oh, it's an innocent, harmless children's book. But yet the plight of this single mother is she got to go get food for her baby. And she leaves the baby. And this baby is wandering in this world, wandering out, like just wanting a mama. I just want my mama. But it just goes back to, I think it's a deeper thing here. And I think it's really important to talk to children about books, because there's so many different things you could teach through a book. Because my thing is like, where's my mother? But where's my father? Where's my father? And what is his responsibility in this? If that little baby bird would have got crushed by the snort or eaten by the dog or anything like that, all the blame would have been placed on that mother. In society, if I would have went to that emergency room with my 3 little boys in the house, and I went to that emergency room because I'm sick as a dog, and something happened to them, my house, and I would always have these paranoid visions of my house catching on fire or the kids slipping in the tub and busting their head open and nobody is there. I would always be like, sit still, don't move, I'll be back, that type of thing, but always worried that something was going to happen to them. And God forbid anything would have ever happened to that magnitude, nobody would have ever asked, well, where their daddy was at. All that responsibility, even legalities behind that, all the legalities to child neglect, all of that would have been placed, that burden is placed on whoever that in the home parent is. And nobody ever stops to say, yo, that father should have some accountability for these children, or that absentee parent should have some type of responsibility. And it just, now when I see that, people don't know who to trust. But I hope that I am that community member that people be like, hey, Ms. Brown, Gloria, can you watch my kid for a minute? I need to run to the grocery store. I really need to go to the doctor. So the village has become toxic in some aspects, but people, young people who are now having their children and looking for direction, and they're going through these, you know, they need pillars in the community now. And they need people like mama and grandmama and stuff to say, you know what, that child's other parent is not there, but I will watch them. I'll feed them after school. And so many people don't have that in their community. Your kid don't have to be a latchkey kid, because you really could trust the lady next door. But you got to build these relationships. But yeah, I do feel that single mother plight, that guilt all the time. And sometimes you got a whole man in the house, and the kids, you don't feel like your kids are safe, but that's a bad decision on who you decided to make kids with, like me. But anyway, you know, the responsibility, socially speaking, always falls on the mother, and there is a lot of guilt there.
If I may, I would love to piggyback with Gloria had mentioned as far as community. You're so right. Again, I've been born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and even though my mom and my siblings, they definitely, as far as babysitting, they loved her, because my daughter ended up babysitting their sons growing up, you know, her cousins. But I will say, I remember that nosy neighbor, which every time you do something, hey, Miss Dorothy, you so nosy. You so nosy. Say, all right, get off that yard, get off that corner. You know, she was like, what time you're supposed to be in? And we're like, hey, come on. You know, and do you believe she passed away many years ago, but that was my drinking part. As I became an adult, we would have a sip of what she used to drink, maybe a little sip of wine, or, you know, I think she was a Scotch woman. And when she had her daughter, her granddaughter, we would talk about that generation, because her granddaughter and my daughter was the same age. So that was really interesting. Again, when generations of how you had that community, and he says, you're so nosy, and just being a blessing to have her as my best friend. And she was a wise woman. And you know, and that's what I always and continue to believe in. When you have these young mothers, you know, that's going through a whole lot, whether it's drinking problems, whether it's drugs, and they have all these babies and they don't know how to feed them or even cook for them. You know, it opens up those doors to try to do for those who really want to receive you. Because right about now, I stay in my lane. But when I have someone, you know, my Mama Bev, you know, we have these conversations with my daughter's girlfriends. They call me mama, call me auntie. I keep it raw, you know, and I love the relationship, because again, if you do not tell somebody, you can never assume that when they make that choice, that they understand what may happen because of their choices. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Bev.
Mm.
That was raw. I love it.
Great. Happy.
1 second. Ooh, just make some adjustments. Okay, we're gonna move on to Damien's dilemma. Okay, for Angelique, just joining us, I just read Damien's Dilemma by Damsels in Defense, and it was a story about gun safety. And one young man, I don't want to get their names mixed up, the friend Jonas sharing his dad's gun with Damion in the hopes to go into the woods and shoot cans and have fun. I know you probably came in on the end, but that's how it started. And Damion, in his heart, knew that this was a tricky situation. And later, Miss Sapphire is going to tell you about the Parents Guide and everything that encompasses the kidversations brought out by Safe Hearts. So she'll share with that part of it with you. But we're going to talk about the adult lessons from this book. To start, if anyone wants to give any feedback after the reading, go ahead before I get into the questions.
Wait, what counts as feedback?
Just your comments about the book, any critique or anything you wanna, just say about it.
Oh, I think it's a really heavy topic. I found it interesting also that in the end, the father took responsibility for not hiding the gun correctly, because it can be really hard to admit, as an adult that you've made a mistake, especially in front of a child, especially in a moment when they did something that was life-threatening, because even though they didn't actually take it out and shoot at anything, just the fact that they removed it from where it was and that was dangerous enough, anything could have happened. So sometimes it's hard to stay level-headed in those situations, but I found that very interesting that the father was willing to admit that clearly he had not taken the steps that he needed to take to make it inaccessible.
I love that. I love that about the book as well. Does anyone else have a comment?
Yeah, to piggyback on what Angelique said, traditionally, especially, I'm guessing from the cover of the book that I can see that these kids are African American, and I really did appreciate that.
Just to clarify, Jonas is not. He is Caucasian. I'm not sure if I'll be able to angle this in a light that you can see it well. There he is. That is Jonas.
Okay, looking at the cover here, I assumed that both boys were African American. So let me make sure I got the names right. The child who found the gun, is that an African American child?
No. Jonas is the Caucasian.
And that's the one who wanted to show the other child the gun.
Yes, Damion is the African American child.
Okay, and that completely voids out my point. But to piggyback on what Leek was saying, even in different cultures, but typically in the African American culture, when the adult is wrong, sometimes there's a blame shift. And even in all cultures, when the adult is wrong, they blame shift onto the child. That child is usually disciplined physically with a spanking, a timeout, punishment, or something for doing what they had done. And I, like Angelique was saying, I like the fact that the parent in this book took accountability. I also like that it didn't wrap up with a pretty bow. Oh yeah, it's wrong. Let's put it back. Ding. I'm glad it did not go that way. I'm glad that when the young boy who was contemplating about going with the friend, that when he confronted the friend, that the friend didn't have a like, oh, you're right, dude, let's just put it up. No, he got angry. I'll just go by myself. Those are natural reactions from children. Like it didn't end, it did not wrap up like after school special. It really was more realistic. The reactions of the characters were realistic, and it didn't just end, it didn't tie up with a pretty bow. And that's the part I appreciated about the content, is that the young boys, there was some conversation after he said, yo, I gotta tell on you. I'm gonna tell on you. And he was like, why would you tell my dad? That was great to me, that it didn't wrap up. Oh, let's just put it back. Ding. Yeah, I like the way that the author portrayed the young characters.
You went right into one of the questions, which was, what would be your first reaction if you were Jonas's parent, the child that pulled the gun out?
Now with older age and a little bit more calm in my soul. If my children were approximately the ages that were described in this book, and am I right, 10, 11, something like that?
That seems about accurate.
Yeah.
Bev, you can correct me
the
if
children,
we're
like
wrong.
it says about the oldest Simon is around 14 years old. He
14.
So around that age group. that's why he came into the tricky conversation of really it's just like the consciousness of Damon.
Okay.
That's how I interpret it.
Okay. So, you know, if my kid was 14 and discovered this gun, my reaction might have been different. You know, I might have been that parent to fly off the handle and shift the blame onto the child. No, it was your responsibility to make sure that this child could not access this gun and that your child is educated and informed about it and not showing it to another friend. Because in the South, that is a common storyline where children actually shoot other children with their parents' firearms. That is very common where I live. So the book is really good. My initial reaction when my children were younger, I would have whooped them. I would have spanked their behinds. Who told you to touch that? Why were you in my stuff? But after reading the book, being honest with myself, the better way was you failed as a parent. You failed to educate your child. You failed to put the gun away properly. You failed to lock it up. You failed to to do what was right by your children. Because also in the book it said, what if your younger brother, would have got a hold of it? And he's like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I really like the way the storyline plays out. And it really makes me question myself as a parent right now with a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old. They're fully aware of where this firearm is. They can reach it. And that sticky area, now I'm in a gray area. They need to know how to get this gun, load it, and shoot it if it needs to happen. But I do need to have some more conversation with my boys now that I have a firearm in my house.
Great. Well, and that I like to piggyback on that because excellent feedback from you ladies. I really appreciate it. First and foremost, I appreciate Annette just putting this as a platform because as you know that these books is about that kid conversation and what if. So what I love about Damon is because it's like he says again, it's when you have your peers, the support, it's cool to do this. It's cool to do that, especially like you says in states that you can carry guns. A lot of times, sometimes we have to be really careful about that too. I mean, I sell non-lethal, I'm New York, New York State and stuff. I don't believe in that, but yes, I do believe in if you have to have it locked up because out of the anger for the children. Sometimes it's not even just to explore it. It could be something that's going on and the child decides to carry a weapon because he may have gotten beat up or abused. But it is a tough situation. But what I love about the feedback is having that tricky conversation until to go, yeah, let's shoot some cans. And then when Simon came in aboard, that's a safe heart. It's like got a moment to think about what if, and to know with even in your child, I'm courage. This is what my mom, my dad said to me, and I trust what my mom and dad said to me. And this is the way that it doesn't make me a punk, because peer pressure. So I really, really, that's one of the books I really love because we talk about guns, like you said, they shoot each other, the gang banging, different areas. And there's a reason why you have to lock it up. Let them know that sometimes it's not, you just can't get it because you got angry with somebody, because you call the cops and you got a gun, the situation, especially in our Black community. So it's definitely something to consider. But for that age group, I love it because we cannot, no matter how young they are, assume that what we say to them, they're going to obey it. It has to me, it should be at the dinner table. We got a firearm. This is something that we do, have these role playing. And that's one thing, again, what I love about the damsel in defense, because it's just not that one-time conversation. It's a routine of whatever situation your child may be making choices. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Bev, and you're welcome also. Um, so looking back, Damion, he said his dad is going to take them to do a safety course when he's 12. So I'm assuming he's a little under, even if it's by a few months. So my question to everyone is, how old at what or which age you would allow your child to have company unsupervised?
Ooh, that's a good question. It would depend on the maturity of the child, but I would say maybe about 13 or 14. It would depend. Like if they had a friend over on a Saturday and I needed to run out quickly, as long as I knew that parent and I knew that they would be okay with it, I wouldn't have a problem running out, to go pick up something quickly and come right back. But in terms of like having them have friends over on a weekend when I'm not home, or like after school and I'm not home for a couple of hours, probably wouldn't be okay with that until they're like 14 or 15, especially if there's younger children home too that they have to watch. It's just not a safe situation. The more kids they are and the younger they are, the more room there is for things to go wrong. But if it was like I have one child, then probably about maybe between 13 and 14, depending on, sensing their maturity. If it was like a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old or a 10-year-old, then it starts to be like, maybe it'll be better for your friends to come over when I'm home.
All right. Anyone else?
That's a very difficult conversation because my children were never allowed to bring people over. And I know that sounds very harsh. And it's not only because of the different standards of people's homes, the different standards of children, different, I live in a very rural area. So I think everything is really relative according to your environment, where you live, who you live around, your neighborhood, and who's in that neighborhood. But as far as my children were concerned, they were not, if it wasn't your cousin, kids around the neighborhood, absolutely not. No. No neighborhood kids come to my house. I knew the standards of my sisters. I knew the standards of my family. And I knew what we all kind of socially agreed on what is right and what is wrong. So if my children were ever in the home with other children, they would have been blood related relatives. So I don't feel comfortable with having outside children in my home. My children were never allowed to spend the night in anybody's home. Those things, because it always poses such dilemmas. And it goes back to a book we read earlier on this platform where the little girls, where the little girls are in the house and the house gets hot.
Yes,
And
my friend's new toy.
yeah, my friend's new toy. We read that book, and that book gave me the heebie-jeebies, and it confirmed why I never let my kids go to other people's houses, and other kids who were not blood related did not come to our home based on the different standards and cultural norms for your family. So I'm gonna just answer that question straight out. Never.
I wonder if for me, because I did go to friends' houses and friends did come to my house, my mother always met their parents. Like the parents always wanted to meet each other first and you get a feel for them. But I wonder if it was because I was in a predominantly Caucasian area.
I
Well,
think
I
that
would add on as far as me growing up, especially with my daughter, it was the same. I wouldn't have her with company while I'm not around. I was a big believer in being responsible for someone else's child. And, that bothered me if something happened. It's not easy to say, I'm sorry, but I have to deal with the parent, how the parent acts, and even the child. If the child is ruly, they look, hi, Miss Bab, how you doing? And all of a sudden they're the crooks and everything. Let's do this, let's go. Oh, I had a lot of them. So I definitely read who my daughter's friends were, and eventually was able to find out, you know, because growing up too, there was a lot of parents that wasn't in the home, and the oldest child was raising their siblings and stuff like that. But you're absolutely right. I would not allow my daughter to just go to anybody's house. And even myself, when I was young, I had a girlfriend, her mom and dad would go over there for dinner, you know, but somebody, an adult, was always home. So I guess I just fall in line with that, you know. So that I definitely, there's no age. I would not have, no, because when they're in your home, something happens to them, it's a whole nother ball game. So I don't at all.
Thank you, ladies. It definitely just went over every other point I was gonna make. You guys, you crushed it in conversation. Because this book definitely, like a lot of the damsel in defense books, they really don't hold punches too much, and they kind of cover both perspectives. So you don't have to leave a lot to the imagination. What it does to me is really make us question ourselves in those situations, because like Ms. Brown said, her reaction would not have been the same. But I don't know about anybody else. For me, I don't know any other reaction, because situations like that in my childhood, there's no question. You were doing something you weren't supposed to be doing. The parent doesn't apologize for it. You just get disciplined.
Very
Like,
true.
there was
That's
no
very true.
conversation. That's what's missing. That's why I love the series, and that's what they give us: conversations, other ways of thinking. And it's like, you can, of course, we grow and mature. You might think about that now as a person who's matured, but a knee-jerk reaction usually takes practice just to change that habit for most people. 1 second. I'm going
That's why.
to go ahead.
Oh my. But that's why I think literature is so important, and the fact that it's a children's book. Children's books tend to be shorter. They have pictures. They're highly attractive to people. And even as adults, we're sitting here reading these books and we're getting these deep messages on how we can go back and then teach our children. But these books create a platform for that conversation that you naturally would not have. All you're going to do is tend to react like your parents reacted. So I think literature is so important, especially in minority communities and communities of high poverty, that books are essential to changing the lifestyle and the culture for the positive. Books are that platform. You want to get out of a lot of social situations, a lot of things that we need as a country, you can do it through literature. You can change an entire generation through literature.
I completely agree.
I'm going to move on to Ms. Sapphire's presentation. Want to just give me a moment?
Well, I try to just do a little presentation. Basically, as an independent damsel pro, I had put in the chat my website again. I know Annette, first time she informed everyone with Safe Hearts. So I'm an independent distributor, again, with Damsel in Defense, and they have non-lethal. So they have from pepper spray on down to stun devices. But out of all of the items, they also have things, you know, protect digital, you know, when you go online, you see. But I was really, really focused on the Safe Hearts and the stun devices. That's first and foremost, because I believe in being aware. And also, what do you do when you want to speak to an adult, or how do you speak to your children? Because what happens is, look, I work 2 jobs raising, like I said, my daughter's 39, but it hasn't changed that much. You know, you still got a partnering. If you have a husband or you have a loyal boyfriend or the father's baby, it's still a partnership. So damsel in defense, parent to parent, it was developed with not only illustrators, but a psychologist. They talked it over because Mindy Lynn, she had, this is only 9 years, so it's a very young company, but she had shared her molestation from her father. So in her journey of healing, she thought that was an excellent component. So what we're doing now, it just opens up the platform, you know, child safety in school, at home, and how to embrace prevention without what is it? Paranoia. Paranoia is very important too, because like you said, sometimes the kids are so scared of us as parents, they become secret. And other people get in their ear and they begin to trust other people. You can go to the next one, my dear. So this is just the opening of Safe Hearts and what we do. So this will give you an idea. The empowerment for kids is as easy as 1, 2, 3. As Annette was sharing, it talks about kid conversation. When you get the books, not only each Safe Heart, they remind you, you remember we used to see the Bugs Bunny, you had the devil on one side, you had the angel on the other. Well, to me, the Safe Hearts is the one that puts up in your ear. The books identify, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? So Simon, in this case, and I'll use Damon's, good judgment, they come in from age 4 to, like I said, 14. But to me personally, even if they read the book themselves, they're old enough, age 16, 18, it's good to have a conversation to see what happens. No means no. Now it's like, oh, you just hot, you want me. No, how many people lost scholarships? How many young men, especially Black men, that went to jail and other things that's going on? So to me, these books just takes from one side to another. So what I'm going to talk about, I'm breaking it down, is the proactive parent guide. And within that, for instance, as I read just a little statistics, we always talk about being about factual. So when you talk about factual, you talk about approximately 1 and 3 million children in America are sexually abused each year. Okay, then the FBI estimates that a child has almost a 25% chance of being molested. Now, we're not talking about intercourse or penetration. We're talking about how somebody touched you inappropriately, right? And then on this, with the parent guide, which I'll talk more on, they have different categories. So for instance, I have this screen here. So just give you an idea of what it looks like. Here's a family, and within this, it talks about situations. So, you got to go back to the slide because I just wanted to show that part. But when you go back, so basically, you remember, I remember growing up when they says, well, no one showed us how to be a mother, that manual. Well, one thing I love about this proactive parent guide is your children, what to look for. Even if you have a child that's challenged, disabled, challenged, if there's some other things that you need to focus on the child, that is what that parent guide gives us. In the middle, you see all the books. Right now we have 12 books, and 12 books, they're eventually, through diversity, they're going to start off with Spanish. So for instance, the parent guide is in Spanish. So out of our newest line, we even have one for toddlers, which is a heavy duty book. So Damsel in Defense are expanding what they have, but again, you can see the number 3 is like lunch boxes, plates, because we want to put them in the back of the mind. Everyone got a superhero, right? Why not have a superhero that protects your mind, body, and spirit? Teaching your children that your most important part of you is yours. And no one, I don't even care if you got, children that's still a virgin. Sometimes you got to check on that too. But we remember the first time. It wasn't, well, I know mine wasn't kind. But I mean, as far as going through the process of being in love and and touchy-feely and all the rest of this stuff. Sometimes, like I said again, each child has certain situations and every child is different. And I truly believe when you open up these conversations, like the first one and number 3, they even have a board game. You know, when the last time we had, other than Monopoly, when you talk about, well, what happens at this decision, and if you make a wrong decision, you don't move anywhere, they tell you what to go next. So Damsel in Defense says, you know what, these kid conversations, why not have them with certificates when they read the book and they sit and talk to parents, say, you know what, mom or daddy, I know my friend said this to me, I did this, and you give them a bat, you give them reward. Because that's one thing that I loved about Damion. He gave an award to his child, even though he's going to be punished. So you can go to the next screen, my love. I think I have something else. So as you move on to the next one. So I want to tell you also, oh, this tells you the books. So the books just give you, like it says, each one is catered to from pornography, from guns, is on these conversations that you would have with your child, with your grandchildren, you know, when that day comes or whatever. And it reminds me of a collection called Let's Talk About. That is it reminds me of a book. It was like 10 or 12 books, and I bought it all for my daughter. So let's talk about bullying. Let's talk about, you know, emotions. And when I seen these books, I said, you know what? This is going to be one product that I sell from my home, that I want these type of platforms to talk with educators, to talk with mothers, you know, to have that kid conversation, but what would you do? And that, I think you can go to the next one. I think we talk about the Safe Hearts. Is that the last one? Go up one more, and that is the Safe Heart. So number 3. And I'll be done with that, and then I can share. So number 3, so making a difference. So each book that you buy, 5% goes to Damsel House Project. So not only does business give you incentives, I wanted to have a business, be a part of a business that's socially responsible. So right now they're in India and Cambodia. So, but the CEO, the mission, as they build, they want to have other Safe Hearts. And this is really a blessing for me, because in my community, one thing I wanted to take on is that I didn't see in our last conference 2 years ago, women that look like me. Yes, we understand about assault, PTSD, trauma, you know, all these things. I get it. But when it comes down to communities, and I'm learning more, or how someone would take the domestic violence with a woman of color as opposed to a woman who got a shotgun and ready to, you know, shoot her husband out the door, and or the woman comes back and forth in our communities. And I knew that wasn't conversations that I wasn't hearing. So along with the books, it still gave a platform to even get in communities who want to empower themselves. Because it's statistically wise, if I was molested, a lot of times our children would go through the same thing and we don't see it. Or we may be in denial to say, you know what, this happened to me, don't worry about it. If you listen to all of the communities of our children, what they're faced with, one community had shared about during COVID, when she did a statistics with a college, and she said how many families had older adult children, well, you know, like I said, 18, 21, that would maybe have sex with the landlord. This is real talk. Yes, real talk. These are statistics. These are things like they talk about sexual trafficking and human trafficking. These people are locked up in people's attics. You know, this is where I think it's so important that we get out of the clouds and really see factual things. not fear, because that's one thing that I had to deal with. I mean, I'm a Christian woman. Yes, I will take on a non-lethal weapon before I take a weapon, and I work for an organization, you know, law enforcement, but it's the choice that each person makes. You still want to be empowered, because no one has the right to do anything to anyone. So that's why I just love this particular project, because they have an ultimate goal with these books. And also you're getting the books not only for your families, but also a percentage is going for a greater cause. Absolutely. So I guess I'm done with the slide, and I'll show you a little bit the book again so you can see a large view. And you let me know when it's time. So this simple book here, again, it's called Sharing Awareness for Family Empowerment. And this is $7, including tax. But as you go in, and like I said, when you go on the website, it definitely give you breakdown, but some things that I definitely wanted to share. Some of the chapters, for instance, who remember the role play? How when we used to do role playing with our children, or you know, get into those type of conversations. What if? Knowing the warning signs of abuse. You know, what happens when your child is so angry, so upset, you know, ready to curse you out, and you're like, are you going through your hormones? You know, you think all this other stuff, but never sat down to say, have you been touched? And just in closing of this, because like I said, my lovely, is beautiful. Like I said, the book, it gives you not only the chapters, but it also allows you to take notes. So this is a book to at least get you geared up, not only on the conversation, get you to know that nobody wants to hear these statistics, but when you do talk to other parents and you understand, you know, how they upbring these children, at least if nothing else, have these essential family safety conversations, you know? So again, I love these type of platforms. Again, I'm 360 degrees on what I love, but I definitely want to serve and continue to have these kind of conversations. So it's not about selling the product. It's like knowing what can this person do to help empower you, educate you, and to equip you. So I definitely thank everyone for that moment in time for sharing my story and my journey.
Thank you so much, Bev. That was amazing. Amazing. I want to thank everyone for their participation today and helping heal our community, because that's my whole goal in all of this, these conversations that we need, you know, and maybe there's someone out there who just don't have anyone to have these kind of conversations with, or they are looking to understand why. And just having this to listen to might help them, you know, and it might help parents raising their children right now to not make the same mistakes we did, or try to find and see some of the pitfalls of why, you know, they do things the way they do and it may not be working for them. Just to open it up and also to inspire others to write and create with these things in mind for the future generations. Again, I want to thank you, ladies. I'm going to wrap it up for now. Looking forward to our next roundtable. Again, you can email me, call me, text me, book suggestions for the next meetings going forward. We're going to try to do this again bi-weekly. Keep it going. We have so much content, so many discussions. I am excited for our wonderful community and platform we're building.